What I think a lot of recruitment agencies forget is that moving jobs is a massive, massive life decision. People's work can affect everything in terms of their relationship, their kids, their family, their mental health, their health. Are you an exciting business? Are you an exciting prospect for our candidates? Are you growing? Are you progressing? Are you innovative?
Treat others how you expect to be treated. It's a massive performance enhancing drug exercise. You do it and it improves not only your personal life but your work life too.
The issue is with one-stage interview processes is...
What's the funniest, worst excuses you've had about not attending a job interview?
Yeah, there was one where he rings me up, says, I had a dream last night.
Welcome to episode 1 of the Game Changers podcast. We're joined today by Jack from Tact IT. So Jack, do you want to tell me a bit about Tact and what you guys do?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me on first of all. And
you're welcome.
Amazing podcast studio. Puts ours to shame. So what do Tact do? So we do recruitment, basically. It's IT recruitment. Kind of everyone in Manchester does recruitment, it seems like. I think the biggest thing about us is that we connect tech leaders and talent managers with outstanding candidates fast. That's our big thing. We just do it fast. Alongside that, we also have a podcast, not to put yours to shame. It's, again, not as professional as this. And we do a lot of tech meetups and host a lot of tech meetups in the Manchester area.
And I think we'll be on your podcast soon.
So. Hopefully so, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And what kind of customers do you work with?
So customer-wise, our kind of ICP are those fast growth businesses who have recently had funding, whether it be kind of seed, Series A, Series B, basically businesses who understand the importance of partnering with an agency and making sure the recruitment process is as effective as possible. And we kind of coach them through that as well. That's one of the differentiators between us. We don't just send you CVs and fill your jobs. We do that and very, very well. We're also big on knowledge transferring, knowledge sharing, coaching, and being pretty candid with the clients that we work with.
And if you wind back the clock, what inspired you? What was like the origin story? What inspired you to start Tact?
So I've said this quite a few times. So if it sounds scripted, then that's the reason why. So me and my two co-founders, Tom and Harry, we worked for a business for a long period of time. We started there when it was 6-7 people and worked all the way up until a point it was about 30, 40. Yeah. And it was great. It started off great, but I think it kind of moved away from that roll your sleeves up kind of startup culture, everyone getting involved. And it became a bit more of a big beast. And it wasn't as fun to work there. COVID happened, and me, Tom and Harry were the 3 top billers in the business. We were, creating 50% of the revenue, I think, for like a 30, 40 person business. So we thought, yeah, after COVID, hopefully catch the elastic band effect of hiring, and thought, screw it, let's go and do it and try it ourselves. So we all moved back to our parents' houses for a few months and kind of recruited in our underpants, which was, a rude awakening. Your mum coming in with a brew when you're in your late 20s, waking you up for work. So we did that, and then people just seemed to love what we were doing, finding the right candidates and really, really fast. Yeah, so we moved into our first office, which was it was a 2-person office, a Brandwood office at 111 Piccadilly.
Nice.
Yeah, which if anyone listening has done that journey from Piccadilly Station all the way to Piccadilly Gardens, it's a very interesting walk to the point where I saw a guy getting booted out of Greggs at 9 a.m. by 2 bouncers.
Greggs.
Yeah, if you need bouncers on Greggs, there's something going wrong. And anyway, so we're in this office. It was a 2-person office pretending to a 3-person office. So you can imagine what that smelled like. Three lads in a tiny little office working all day. It was still kind of lockdown-ish. So our after-work beers consisted of just grabbing a crate of Budweiser and listening to music, basically. And that's where we came up with a lot of our ideas.
Cool.
And then, it kind of spiraled from there. We were like, damn it, we need to hire some people now. So we moved into another office, started hiring people. That was a learning experience in itself. And, when you're recruiting for people as your job, for other people, it kind of humbles you a little bit. When you start recruiting for yourself, you realize how hard it is.
Yeah.
We made a lot of mistakes doing that. And now fast forward, we're 2 years in, 14 people with some pretty exciting growth plans on the horizon.
So, when you mentioned that you were top billers, the 3 of you.
Yeah.
Was it a particular gap in the market that you identified, like something that you could do? Or was it more so that actually you've done really well in the business you're in, and actually, look, we can go and do this, and actually then we've got the lion's share of the equity in the business, as opposed to, like, for example, working there, earning commission? Was it more so like you spotted a gap in the market, or was it that actually we can do this better?
The gap we identified was the recruitment industry, for anybody who knows, it is very cutthroat. It's not very flexible. It's not incredibly innovative. It doesn't really care about people's mental health that much. Things have changed, obviously, from when I first started in recruitment. It was, 3-piece suits and Rolex watches and slick back hair. And, it wasn't the kind of place that you really want to work now. You kind of cringe if you looked at it. Yep. Can I swear on this podcast, by the way?
Yeah.
You sure? I was going to.
You might bleep it out.
That's fine. It's just a classic recruitment wanker, basically.
Is that like a briefcase wanker, but slightly different?
Yeah, slightly different, more fake tan.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a classic recruitment wanker environment. Things have changed, of course, but when we left our last business, one of the reasons we left was there wasn't a lot of training. We weren't very well looked after. It was a big culture of just going out and getting smashed all the time. And so we set up Tact as a bit of a social experiment, really, when we started hiring, thinking, okay, well, we know what doesn't work. Let's try and do the opposite and see what happens. So we have a massive focus on mental health at Tact, like big on being flexible with people and treating them like adults as you should, and pay people very, very well, have a very stringent hiring process internally for what we hire for. And it seemed to have worked.
So obviously the podcast title is about the game changers. Mm-hmm. What would you define a game changer as in business or in your industry?
In our industry, I think it's someone who isn't just specking out a million CVs a day, someone who is involved in the community. The tech community, that's a big part of us, big part of what we do. So again, we are the co-hosts and co-organisers of the Manchester Web Meetup.
Cool.
A great meetup that was originally set up by a fellow called James Wright. Really, really great guy. He stepped down in the end. I'm not too sure why. And then after COVID, we just recently had a resurgence of it, and it was fantastic. We hosted it at Roku's offices in Circle Square. Had a great turnout. It was all around domain-driven design. Went straight over my head, but everyone...
It means nothing to me.
Yeah, good. That makes me feel better. But everyone loved it, which was great. Big turnout, loads of beers, loads of pizza. So getting involved in the community in that way. A big thing that we do that I think is a big game changer is our podcast, Tact Talks. Sorry to plug it. But, when we first started, it was a place where we were giving people a platform to discuss what they're up to behind the scenes, the exciting things they're talking about, the exciting things they're up to, sorry. And as it's developed, we've got more and more towards getting founders on of exciting tech businesses and talking about what they're up to and telling the wider tech community about what they're up to. So I think things like that, just not being in it just for the money. I think if you're in it for the community and in it to give back to an amazing community, the tech community is so charitable and like understanding. I think if you give back to the tech community, you'll reap the rewards anyway. It'll just come. So I think that's probably what a game changer is in recruitment.
And how did you get into actually sort of sponsoring or co-founding that environment in that web meetup community? Well,
I always went to meetups. When I first started in recruitment, I always went to meetups, and recruiters aren't usually very welcome at meetups. But the great thing is, when I first started in recruitment, I was skint, and meetups allow you to eat for free pretty much most of the week. So was I in the best shape? No. Did I feel great? No. But it gave me an opportunity to have free dinners. But all joking aside, to meet amazing people. And at first, when you go in, they're a bit like, oh, who's this guy? But you get to meet people, and you start getting in with the right people. And I've just always been involved in the tech community in one way or another. So when the Manc Web Meetup had a resurgence, Laura, who is like responsible for setting up again, reached out and asked if I knew anybody who was willing to sponsor it. And I said, yeah, we will, definitely, because it's such an amazing community. And then it just went from there, really.
How do you make sure that you remain innovative and ahead of the sort of the landscape? And what are you doing in a sort of technology perspective in the organisation to do that?
Yeah, good question. So we joked about when we were setting this podcast about our theory of beers and ideas. And if anyone listening, it does work. Have 2 beers and then start discussing something.
It would only take me 1 beer, since I don't really drink.
There you go. It'd be quicker, more efficient.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I think a big thing for us is twofold, where we iterate on everything and are incredibly big on psychological safety within the workplace. So one of our values is continuous candor. but it's something that we really, really push and focus on. So we're candid with people in the business about if we think something's not right or something needs to be fixed. And we expect also people in the business to be candid with us. Sometimes they are a bit too much, and it's but it's really, really good, and it helps. Yeah. So we welcome that, and I think because of that, we get loads and loads of amazing ideas from the business, people in the business, rather than just us three thinking about things all the time. So one thing we do is, if someone comes up with an idea in the business that we run with, and it can be as small as having new tea bags in the office, or it can be something massive that changes an entire process, we'll give that person £100 basically every single time, which it does get quite expensive at the beginning because people are like, wait, I can just come up with ideas and get paid for it. Like, yeah. And they do, and they rinse it, definitely. But the plan is that it gets to the point where there's no ideas left, and we're the best recruitment business in the world. Yeah, we might have no money left, but
that'll all have paid dividends, hopefully.
Exactly. Yeah. And to answer your question about tech, we do use tech in our business. So for me, we use tech to just automate as much as possible, but only automate the stuff that's boring and that's a waste of time. In terms of like just admin stuff, because I think we hire amazing people and we pay them really, really well because they're amazing. To then have to pay them to do really boring data entry or stuff that doesn't require a lot of brain power, I think it's just an entire waste of time. So we use as much tech as possible to just automate the boring stuff. As soon as it gets to the point where it's affecting or coming into the point where we converse with our candidates or our customers, then I halt it, stop it straight away, because that's what makes us different, is the fact that we build our network through our personalities. And as soon as you start trying to automate that, it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a lot of businesses that hide behind automation. So you end up with, you never deal with a human. And often that's the reason you chose to work with that company in the first place.
Yeah.
Is that human personal touch. And when that starts to become distant, a bit like some of the challenger banks have become sort of more over time. Initially you go on the web chat like Monzo, Starling, whatever. You could talk to someone straight away, they'd be super helpful. Whereas now it's become a little bit more difficult to get hold of an agent over chat. And that's just an example of that over time, that automation starts to take over.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just ruins the customer experience.
Agreed. For me, as soon as it starts to affect that, it's a real shame. I mean, what I think a lot of recruitment agencies forget is that moving jobs is a massive, massive life decision. People's work can affect everything in terms of their relationship, their mental health, their health, their relationship with their kids, their family. Like, work is the crux of it all. And if you're just a recruiter who just is trying to force that deal in or force that person to take a job, it's a massive, massive life decision. I think because recruiters do it so much, sometimes the novelty wears off and they forget how important it is to people. And that's why I think automation in recruitment isn't a danger. People talk about how, are you ever worried about your job? Are you ever worried about how is recruitment going to get replaced? I'm genuinely not. And years ago, we hosted an event at Tariff and Dale in Manchester. It was years and years and years ago, tech event. And I got talking to someone over pizza, and I said, trying to make conversation, what do you do? And he says, well, I'm creating a platform that's going to put you guys out of business. Ha ha ha. And I thought, that's right.
Good luck.
Yeah. I was like, that's an interesting way to build rapport, but okay. Anyway, fast forward to now. He did create that platform, by the way. I won't name the business. I'll tell you who it is after. Fast forward to now, I've interviewed 3 separate people who work at that business who are looking for a new job because it didn't work. And they reverted to the old agency model, because you cannot replace a recruiter's job with a robot. How could a robot or a platform go and coach a person who hasn't interviewed for 20 years, who's nervous about interviewing for the first time? How can a platform go and meet someone on an industrial estate in Cheshire and coach them or talk to them about how they think they made the wrong decision and understand why? How could a platform go to a business and understand that business's culture from going and visiting it and viewing it and talking to the people there, and then convey that to a candidate? It's impossible. It doesn't work. Yeah,
no, I agree. I've been on the receiving end of that pressure close before.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. So years and years ago, one of my roles that I took, I felt pressured into it.
Okay.
And I wasn't there for long, so it was perhaps a bit of the recruiter sort of trying to twist my arm a little bit in terms of getting me to take the role. When we recruit here, I often tell a little bit of the ugly. Mm-hmm. Almost try and talk someone out of coming to work for us, just warts and all. Look, this is what you're getting yourself into. Mm-hmm. This is going to be the challenges. These are going to be the problems. This is what probably won't go quite to plan. And I think that level of, like you talked about, like I read a book called Radical Candor, and that talks about it's not harsh, it's clear. And I think it's so important to be clear with people around what your expectations are. And yeah, I think in terms of your internal culture, absolutely that being clear with people and then being clear with you around expectations and what they want and what they need is really important.
Yeah, that's a fantastic book. And that I don't know if you remember, I don't know how long ago it was you read it, but that first fable that she tells around the person who she had to let go in the end, but she was like clinging on to this person for dear life and really didn't want to have that conversation, and end up having that conversation. It was super emotional, and the person just said, well, why didn't you tell me that I wasn't doing a good job? Why didn't you tell me? I'd have changed. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's it. And we saw, you never want people to not see that coming. If someone's not working, you want them to know that it's not working out, because I always think like you need to be like, treat others how you expect to be treated. It's really important, like, to share that feedback with people.
Do you find that as a business owner yourself, that a lot of it is just having awkward conversations with people?
Yeah, it is. It's 9/10 that. It's the conversations you don't want to have, that you're dreading, that you put off for days. But they're actually often like the most productive. So you find yourself having a conversation with someone, and you might have a performance problem, you might have like a piece of work that's not to the right quality, or you might need to reset expectations or change someone's role slightly because they're going to be focused on something else. And yeah, those conversations are normally like the ones that you put off and put off and put off. And then you have it. The difference, like, oh great, that's actually what I wanted anyway.
Yeah. Sigh of relief. Oh, yeah. Thank God.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, I can go home now and sleep.
Yeah. I think for anybody who has a conversation they want to have with somebody and is dreading it, just say it. Because once you've said it, it's in the air, it's been said, and then you have to deal with it. It's like handing your notice in. Anybody who's looking to hand the notice in, just say it. Have the conversation and say it. Because once it's there, it's said, you can't take it back. It's done.
No, exactly.
And then you have to deal with it.
Yeah. You talked about the 111 Piccadilly in those early days.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first hire? Apart from the three of you, who was the first hire that you made, and are they still with you today?
I can't say the name, but no.
Okay.
No.
Did it last long?
You know what? Lasted longer than it should have done. Yeah, it did.
Okay, right. Okay.
It did. And you know what? It was on both sides. I think we weren't in the position that we weren't set up to support that person in terms of what they wanted to do. It was a marketing hire, and we weren't experienced in terms of hiring, which I know sounds ridiculous because that's what I do every single day and have done for years.
Yeah.
But when you're hiring for yourself, it's completely different.
It's a different world in those early days because you don't have any appreciation of what someone needs to come in and perform. Yeah, we had a similar story. So we went out to hire our first, because we started the business and we were all techies, and then we went, right, let's go and hire someone in sales. So we hired someone into sales who was new to sales, because that's at the time what we could really afford. And they came in, and obviously they need like some help, coaching, guidance, some direction, and we didn't know it. Just go out and sell. But that does not work. It's hard as a techie, because you come from a business with a sales team, and they're out there selling all the time, and they've been doing that for years. And it's got all the management, all the structure, all the governance, all the systems. You start a business and it's like, yeah, come on. What do you mean you can't sell? And that was a massive learning experience. So we just hired techies until we hired someone in sales eventually.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, I think that is a tough one, isn't it? Hiring someone who doesn't do the same job as you.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what because we didn't know what to look for. So can you use Canva? Great. You're hired. Yeah.
Candidate number one.
Perfect. And it was, you know what? It was a big learning curve, because we also hired another person after that who also didn't work out. Yeah. And again, we were just so inexperienced. But we went, what we did was, we're like, right, okay, move on. Because have you ever seen Ted Lasso?
I've heard of it. I've never watched it.
Okay, well, there's a great. I get compared to Ted Lasso quite a lot because I'm uber positive.
I have to watch it now.
And also, slightly, he has a mustache. Don't have a mustache. Anyway, he talks about how you need to be a goldfish, and he says the reason because goldfish are the happiest animals because they forget. They have like a 10-second memory, 15-second memory span. So if they do something wrong, they just completely forget about it and move on. It's like this is swimming away happily. So it's all about being a goldfish, or be a goldfish. And so we did that. We were a goldfish. We completely forgot about the mistakes we made. Right, sound. Let's go out and let's read and learn and ask people about how they hire. And we did. And now I'm happy to say we hire some incredible people. And we've got the balance of, like you said, doing the anti-sell. Like, by the way, it's going to be tough for a startup. It's going to be long days, long hours. You have to do jobs that perhaps are out of your remit. But also at the same time being like, but the opportunity is incredible. The opportunity is fantastic.
Yeah.
That was our experience of hiring.
Yeah, it's so that you hired your first person, or attempted to hire and get it right, and At this point, there's still the three of you.
Yeah.
What was the biggest sort of turning point in the early stages? What was the sort of activity? Was it just a compound effect of small matters over time, or was it that actually one particular defining moment is what led to a catapult in success in the early days?
There was no particular moment. It just, we were always good at recruitment. And I know that sounds so like vague, but we were just really, really good at recruitment. And we did that. And then we realized that, okay, well, there's a process there that we follow that makes us that good at recruitment in terms of finding candidates. We just formalized that process basically, and then taught that to the people that work at Tact, and we continuously iterate on it. I mean, the process we had back then is not the process we have now. It's completely different, and we welcome, again, feedback from people who are doing it day in, day out. Like, have you tried this? Have you maybe tried this to make it more efficient? As a part of the sourcing process that we've missed, maybe we should try that out and see if that works. We're not scared to change what we're doing consistently in terms of our process. And I think sometimes people are like, oh God, it's going to be such a ball ache trying to change that, because we've already got the processes in place. And then and now as we're getting bigger, to get everyone to do this new style of doing something, it's going to be, but it's always going to be like that. And I think you just need to pull the plaster off. And I think as long as people understand that that's the kind of business they're in, where things are going to change consistently, then it shouldn't be that much of a hassle. But yeah, there was no defining moment. I think we saw what other recruitment agencies were doing and then did the opposite. And it's worked. And that's the reason that, we're not kind of lumped in with these other agencies that have a really bad name in the market, or who are glorified, call center staff who don't really understand what candidates want or the tech market. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think what people these days get sort of sidetracked by is that actually many businesses have been going for years and years and years. And it's a prolonged period of hard effort that results in this behemoth of a business at the end of it all often. And there's very few times like an individual event. Well, there are in some cases, but that's a rarity. It's rare that there is a significant event that leads to like an enormous amount of growth. It's not just like we worked really hard for a period of years, getting better and better and better, and that's what led to the success. And I mean, I haven't spoke to anyone yet that's like, just overnight this thing happened. That was that. So it's nice to hear.
There's a great author called Shane Parrish, and he runs a blog called the Farnham Street blog. I think he's mentioned in Almanac of Naval. I'm going to butcher the last name, but I think people will know what I mean. Shane Parrish is mentioned in that, and he's big on like mental models and stuff like that. But there's a really good quote, and he talks about how a lot of success can just be boiled down to doing really, really boring things for an extraordinary amount of time.
I've heard something similar before. Is that? It's true. Just come in and do the mind-numbing stuff every day, and just keep getting a little bit better and better. And over time, that reaps the rewards. Yeah. And it's like one thing I hear referred to in like a podcast I listen to is being a landing zone for luck, or a landing pad for luck. So just making yourself available for luck to happen. Because I think a lot of stuff in business, it probably is a little bit of luck. And just being available to be lucky. Yeah, like that. So we talked briefly about automation and enter the buzzword AI. And obviously you talked about how, someone's tried and failed to actually replace recruitment with an app. What do you think technology is going to do to enhance your organisation in the next sort of 12 months? What do you see coming that you think will help make you more efficient, more effective, improve the customer experience, etc.?
I think the introduction of ChatGPT, I'm going to say it, ChatGPT and OpenAI, I think that's been helpful in some ways. I think it gives you a bit of a launch pad for certain activities around like marketing stuff, basically. I think that gives you a starting point. I think where people go wrong is perhaps when they just rely solely on that. And then you read it and you're like, that's been done by.
Have you ever asked it to write a bio on you?
No, I haven't. I'm not that secure in myself, I don't think, to write.
So I asked it to write a bio on me, and just to see, like, do you know who I am? And it just made it up. So, and I was trying to prove a point that basically you can't necessarily rely upon everything that ChatGPT says, because it's largely just an algorithm. But I actually use it for job descriptions as a starter for 10. Because I'm like, write me a job description for this role, this salary, doing roughly these things. But you're right, then I have to sort of go back. I'm like, okay, that's a good start, but let's take that out, change this, change that, because that's not right. But it's a great way to just prompt some like a way of writing or an approach to something and make life a little bit easier. Yeah,
we've all been there, especially when you've had a holiday at the weekend and you're coming back into work for the first time and you're like, bloody hell, my mind's a bit all over the shop and I need a bit of motivation and a bit of inspiration. use that and it'll get you started, definitely.
What about asking if some David Goggins quotes?
Yes. No, I know sometimes a lot of the things I say is cheesy. Genuinely watch Ted Lasso. You'll be like, that's Jack. But there's that, and I think also there's a great term called talent pooling. I don't know if you've heard of that before. No. It's basically engaging with candidates before you're ready to hire them or before they're ready to look, and creating a talent pool of people that you're like, right, we want these people in our business at some point in the future. So there's some really good solutions for talent pooling, which is helpful. So keeping those touch points with these candidates to make sure that you're keeping them interested in your business. So when the time comes where they're ready to look for a new job, you're there. Hey, you remember me? I think that's a really good one. I think other tech that is really useful, it comes to when you're trying to hire more diverse teams. I think there's some really good software out there. Have you heard of Gender Decoder?
No.
And Text Analyzer? Basically, a big thing is to look at your job adverts and figure out, okay, is the language that I'm using inclusive? Because a lot of the language that you'll be using in job adverts will deter people from certain backgrounds of applying. If you put it into this software, it will make it so it's neutral. So everyone feels open to applying for this particular job. So that's really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that might be a little bit of like unconscious bias where like people write job adverts and actually there might be like language in there that could deter certain people from applying for the role.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And even there's things like perks that put people off applying for a role. If you're a dad of two, for instance, and you live out in the sticks and you're working for an organisation in the city centre, and one of the perks is, we have a gym bar on a Friday. Basically, we get smashed every Friday. That's not really for me.
It's not doing it for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I just need half a gin.
Yeah, just a little tipple.
Just a sniff. That'll do me.
I thought you would have hit flask outside in the car park. I know what was going on.
No, that was in Piccadilly Gardens. So you mentioned that concept of this like recruitment, like talent pooling and keeping candidates warm. Is that in respect of like people that you would be working with or that your clients are working with? Is it to help clients build a candidate pool? Is it more so for you as Tact to help build a talent pool?
A bit of both, really. We definitely help. A big conversation that we have with our clients is, once we fill the vacancy, we'll talk to them and say, okay, well, when are you planning your next hiring spree?
Yep.
We can have this conversation because we work with pretty fast growth businesses who have recently had investments, so they've got all this planned out, right? They know what they're doing in terms of hiring. So we ask them, and then say we had 2 months, say we're going to hire 4 engineers, 5 QAs, a project manager, whatever. We're like, okay, cool, and we'll start talent pooling them. So by the time they come back to us and say, we're ready now, it's like, great, we've got 5 people here ready to go, done, easy. So you kind of get rid of that lag, and also a lot of the time these people aren't ready to move. I mean, there's a big movement between active candidates and passive candidates. Only about 20% of the market is actively looking for a job at any one time. It might be slightly more now because of the redundancies and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
So it's how you tap into that passive market, this other 80%. How are you engaging with them? That's a big thing.
We've actually spoke about this internally in terms of like how we can be always hiring. To always look like available, because you don't know when someone is going to become available who might want to come and work for you, and that's actually like really difficult to get right. But that's something we've been working on. What sort of things have you been doing to engage with candidates that are in sort of maybe not in the active market but passively out there? And what sort of 3 steps can people take to actually engage with? If you were talking to a tech business and how they can improve their sort of employer brand, what sort of things can they do to improve that?
The first thing I'd say, what is your EVP and what is it like? And you'll get a lot of businesses, and rightly so, it's a fairly vague term. Ask you,
what's EVP?
EVP is employee value proposition.
Okay.
So basically, what are you offering to a prospective employee or your current employees that's going to get them interested? People would tend to say, we'll just ask people what they want and try and give them that within budget. But that's a really dangerous way to go, because that's only material stuff. Material stuff very quickly can get trumped by the next big businesses around the corner. Yeah. So your EVP is made up of 4 things. Usually it's material things. So things like remote working or free fruit in the office or free hot drinks, those sorts of things, which are important, definitely. The next one is opportunities to develop and grow. So the sad truth is that a lot of people will be using, actually not the sad truth, but the harsh truth is that people will be using this business as either a stepping stone to improve their career, obviously, because that's what people do as humans. We just want to progress.
Yep.
either use this to then move on afterwards, or use this to really rise up the ranks. Either way, it benefits the business owner, right? So how can they grow and how can they develop? Another big part of it is connections and community. So what are the advantages of joining your business and being part of a larger group? What kind of support network are you going to have? What's it like to work at your business? Really good way of showing that is in the interview process, getting them to see some of the people within the business. And then the last one is meaning and purpose. So what is your vision for your business? Is it easy to get behind? Is it lived every day? Is it true? Is it just something that's been around there for years and you just go along with it? Is it something that people are actually getting behind? So I think they're 4 really good pillars to look at when looking at your EVP, and a really good starting point. And there's consultants out. I mean, we do a lot of work with people around their EVP as well. So it's interesting to see some really fantastic, amazing big businesses don't have a strong EVP and they haven't even looked at it.
It's crazy because surely that's just effectively that low-hanging fruit over time. Where you can engage with more candidates and potentially, open up that talent pool even further. One thing that I'm perhaps starting to see a little bit of is that these businesses that have have like extremely low churn, not necessarily in like the technology sector, but have extremely low churn, maybe have previously had like a lower dependence upon technology. They're looking to actually improve their tech to attract candidates, because a lot of the people that might have been in their business might have been there a long time and technology might not be a focal point of their organization, but actually they understand that to change and evolve over time, technology is actually really important. So how much of a role do you think that technology plays in people making the decision of like where to come and work? And obviously you're talking about tech companies. So how important is I'm guessing there's a lot of potential like development roles, or is that not something really that you deal with? Is it?
Yeah, so we recruit for the entire SDLC. So everything from engineers through to BAs, project managers, DevOps, data, everything you can think of.
How important is the tech stack when you talk to a dev?
Super important. We're in a good position where we don't have to work with every single business to stay afloat. We're quite picky and choosy about who we partner with. And a big part of that is, okay, well, are you an exciting business? Are you an exciting prospect for our candidates? Are you growing? Are you progressing? Are you innovative? And you can kind of tell if they are by their tech stack or plans to improve that tech stack. So say, you're stuck on maybe an older version of Angular, for instance, but the view is that you're going to migrate it over to the newest version, or maybe even to React, or perhaps you're on-prem right now, but you want to migrate over to the cloud, right? And that's part of your plan, and you've got serious plans to do that. That's a business we want to work with. And as long as you can convey that to a candidate, then great. Yeah, it's very, very important, because what you're going to stand as a candidate in the tech market, especially, the amount of JavaScript libraries that come out is like crazy. It's the new one every week.
It's always a different flavor of the month.
It is, yeah, it is, right? And the flavor of the minute is like React and Node and views coming up behind them. And a techie's tech stack is consistently out of date. So it's got to be consistent. It's got to be consistently progressing. If you can find a business that's also doing that alongside you, then you're going to be keeping your staff happy, and you're going to be being relevant and exciting. Because I think being a techie is just like having homework every single night, basically. So yeah, it's very, very important, the kind of tech stack that you're using as a business. And I understand I'm not naive to the fact that some businesses don't have a choice. They've just inherited this monolith or this old tech stack, and it's fine. And there's people that do want to work on that or don't want to progress, but it's a different kind of talent pool that you're looking at there.
Starting your business, what would you say has been your biggest influence over time on what's helped you get to where you are today? This is going to sound like a really arsey answer. I love reading. I'm really big into reading. And I've got an iPad kind of like you've got, and I get my Kindle and I highlight stuff all the time. And I'm just big on reading stuff, and I reread things and I reread the notes that I made. That's a big thing for me. I'm a bit submissive when it comes to books, in the fact that if I really hate a book, I'll just finish it, like reluctantly, even though people do say that you should just... Well, actually sit and read it or just end it.
No, I'll just read all the way through it. Yeah, I'm such a loser. Yeah, reading is a big thing for me. I think there's so much information out there, rather than you just going through this, making the same mistakes that loads of people made before. I think just go out and read.
It's the Q skip.
The Q skip.
Yeah, it's effectively download the knowledge and skip the queue, because those people have already done it before.
Yeah.
I'm really guilty of like listening to like a podcast or an audiobook, and next thing you know, I come in the next day, I'm like, we need to do this now.
Yeah.
In fact, we moved our customers to pay in advance. We would invoice on basically contract signature for first month and setup.
Okay.
And that came out of a podcast that I listened to.
Wow. Okay.
Or a book. And I just listened to it and I was like, that's pretty much a no-brainer because it's just a prepayment. What customer's going to say no to that if those are just like, because we'd had it done to us a few times. It's relatively normal in the sort of industry we're in. And we weren't doing it. So we were sat waiting quite a long time to actually, years and years and years ago, this was to actually get any money out of our customers once we installed everything, then we started billing it. So it was, like a little thing that we improved off the back of a podcast or a book.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And they tend to be much smarter than you. And they've, like I said, they've been there, done it. What's your favourite book, if you had to pick one?
The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Ooh.
By Ben Horowitz.
I haven't read that. What's it
about?
So
he actually started Andreessen Horowitz, the investment firm.
Yeah.
With Mark Andreessen. And basically his story is he started the first cloud computing business. That's not why I read it, but I'd heard of Andreessen Horowitz and I thought this would be a good book. And it's just some of like the early stories about like starting a business, highs and lows, and like the sort of like near-death experience type stuff where like it's you're about to run off the cliff and leave no skid marks, as they say. So yeah, I mean, I've been there, and like, we've had times where like, oh, there's only so much money left in the pot and we need to go and find some more money so that we can survive beyond X amount of months. And thankfully, like, all those times are gone. It was particularly difficult in the early days. And we were really fortunate to have a little bit of investment. But it's that's probably one of my favourite books. What about you?
Favourite book is The War of Art. I haven't got that mixed up. It's not The Art of War, it's a play on that. The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's a little book with really short chapters, which is really helpful. And it basically characterises procrastination and just sitting down and doing the work. So if you're ever, you get that feeling where you need to go to the gym or you got to do some work, you're like, I'll just watch one more episode or one more YouTube video or
just doom scroll a bit longer.
Exactly. I haven't downloaded TikTok, but I can imagine, you'd want to watch one more TikTok video. And it's just about characterizing procrastination as resistance and recognizing it, and it allows you just to get past it and through it. Yeah. That's a big part of it. And it talks about how the professional just sits down and does the work. And I think that's a big part of anything. I think it's just sitting down and just doing the work, which sounds really simple, but helpful.
It's hard to apply. I just have something I say to myself at the moment because I'm trying to get fit and do more exercise. Mm-hmm. I say, don't let the inner bitch win.
Yeah.
That's what I say to myself. That's the little thing when I'm like, oh, it looks a little bit cold outside. Oh, I might not go out today. I'm like, no, I can't let that person win. I need to go out and get after it.
And how great do you feel? You feel
really
amazing
good.
after?
Something I started doing was I say that I'll go out and do it for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
If I don't like it, I'll turn around. That's my deal with myself.
Yeah.
I get 10 minutes in, never ever have I turned around.
No.
So yeah, it's
getting started, isn't it?
It's getting started. Yeah.
There was someone on I can't remember what her name is. She talks about how just counting down from 5 and then all of a sudden your body just does it. It's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And by the time you get to 1, you're up and you're good to go. It's weird.
Yeah.
But as soon as you get started or you get into the gym or you just sit down in front of your desk and start one task, it is momentum.
How do you organise and plan your day?
I am terrible at organising and planning my day. The amount of candor that I've had, which is basically, Jack, you need to stop being late for meetings, basically. It's something I'm really trying hard. For anyone at Tact listening now, I'm really trying really hard. One thing that I've started doing that's really helpful, I spoke to someone who owns like a big business, and I asked him, I said, how do you manage your time? Because he's traveling all over the world and he's got businesses in different time zones. And he said, one thing I do is I'm just really strict with my time, and I have my entire morning blocked out. And that's what I'm trying to do, is just have like a section of the day where I'm really strict with it, and I don't let people take that bit of time away from me. And I always have that time at lunch for the gym. I always try to go to the gym at lunch.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I've tried this, and it's extremely hard to do. Mm-hmm. So I have a repeating booking in my diary every day from like 3 till 5:30. That's my time to basically go and get stuff done. Not so much like the gym or anything, but like if your day was full of meetings, how are you actually supposed to get any of your actual work done?
Yeah.
I think that's the trap that a lot of like people fall into, is my day is just full of meetings. But how do you actually achieve any of your goals if your day is just full of meetings? I saw recently this, and I don't think it's available on like Office 365, but for Gmail is this plugin you can have, and it basically tells you the cost of a meeting. Whoa. So it feeds into your HR system. It knows the cost of all the people being there. So you can say, oh, actually, this meeting with these 7 people for an hour is going to cost the company X amount. So that then starts you thinking, well, actually, is it worth having this meeting if we know it's going to cost the company X?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to hear, but it's really hard to like get yourself to be so strict, because I can relate to like being late to meetings. That is like me. People probably have to tell me that the meeting was like earlier than it actually was, so that was on time.
Yeah, my girlfriend started doing that for things now. She's like, and it's getting to the point where now I'm taking that into consideration, and I'm being even later.
that time delta's already been considered, my friend.
It's the day before now.
I'm on to you.
It is a struggle. It is. And it's, but I think that being strict with your time is so important, and it's the classic, saying no to things is really, really tough. You think the day before you think you can do it all in one day, but things overrun, and you do need some time for yourself. You're right. And I love that part you just said there about, if you've got meetings all day, you think you're doing work, but you're not really. You're just sitting there and being like a sounding board for whatever's being thrown at you. You can't really sit down and actually do the work that you plan on doing.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned the gym.
Yeah.
What do you do to sort of take care of yourself to make sure that you remain effective over time?
I'm getting a little bit older now, and I think not drinking as much at the weekends is a big one. It's crazy the effect it has on you from like into like Monday, Tuesday. That's not good. I try to lift some weights, but I'm very bad at it. And I love running. Run is my big one. Went abroad recently and was doing loads of running. And I think for me, running is it's very cathartic and meditative, and just like the rhythm of your feet hitting the ground, it just clears your head. That's a big thing for me. You just feel amazing afterwards. I heard someone say years ago is that you should treat your days like credits. So for each day you've got 1 credit basically. You will one day, you lose credit. You go out on the lash the weekend and you lose a day, you lose a credit. You get up a little bit earlier, your credit's worth more. I think if you treat days like that and try and squeeze as much out of life as possible, that's what you should be doing. And for me, if I go for a run in the morning and get up early, I feel like I just get more out of the day rather than rolling out at like 8 a.m. and I'm like, ugh, and then stumble into the office and yeah.
Yeah, I'm not always winning at it, but I started trying to get up earlier, like 5:30 early.
Nice.
And the amount I get done when I'm up early is unbelievable, because I'm in a position where I've sort of already trained and done my stuff before everyone else is even awake. So it's super productive. I actually think like 5 would be even better. I'm not sure I could manage the reduction in sleep.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of diminishing return after a while.
I think sleep is like super important, but you've got to be like strict at going to bed early. Sometimes it's really hard because like, I just watch this YouTube video or watch this thing on TV, just watch another 15 minutes or have another half an hour downstairs, but actually all you're doing is eating into sleep. And I've like recently come to notice like sleep is so important to like being productive. Last night I ended up in bed late, I had loads of stuff going on at home, and I actually rolled my alarm forwards an hour because I was like, I've started to prioritize sleep rather than just like get up early and suffer and then be ineffective. I'm like, no, I've got to make sure I actually get the right amount of sleep to make me useful at work.
Yeah.
It's obviously in terms of like fitness, and then you've got the classic, the burnout. Have you experienced burnout, and how do you make sure that you don't end up in a position where you feel it's normal running it when you start a business? Like I definitely said that I've had periods of like intense burnout in the early days, and even some probably like more recently. But how do you manage to make sure that you aren't suffering with burnout and your team aren't suffering with burnout all the time?
For the team, a big one is we have activities that help us try and get people out of the office a lot. So we do we do mental health walks frequently. So that's just literally us grabbing a coffee, walking around. We're based in Ancoats, which is lovely. And we just go walk around like the marina, and just, we're not allowed to talk about work. And we just get out and get some fresh air. And that's great for us. We're big on, we pay $5 We've got like a class pass subscription as well, so people can go out there, and we're trying to encourage people to go out and move their bodies and get out of their heads. We try and be as flexible as possible. Again, we're pretty candid with each other. So if someone's having a bad time, they can come and talk to us. Also forcing people to take breaks from work. We have someone in my team called Jack, and he just wasn't taking any holiday, so we had to force him to take holiday. So you can't come to work tomorrow, just go and just please take some time off. And it has started doing, and the difference between his work then and now is night and day.
It probably feels 10 times better as well as a result of having a bit of time off and getting that relaxation in.
It does, yeah, 100% it does. Although I think one of the weekends we told him to take, one of the days we told him to take off, he ended up going out and getting drunk. So it was kind of
swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think for anybody, I've started to realize being healthy is the biggest thing. As soon as you're unhealthy or ill, everything becomes 10 times harder. But and you must feel it now that like you said, you're on this like this health kick and you're doing like loads of cycling and exercise. Do you feel like clear-headed all the time? Yeah.
Yeah, it feels so much better. So I on subjects like clear-headedness and health, I've tried the ketogenic diet a few times.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
That gets rid of all the brain fog, but it's completely unsustainable. So I feel like, can I eat that? No, I can only eat basically fat and meat.
Yeah.
Good, awesome. So I can eat very little. That clears the brain fog and you don't feel really hungry, but your exercise has the same sort of impact.
1,000,000%. Yeah, the keto stuff's great. I'm the same. I tried it and it sounds amazing. Like I can eat as much cheese, bacon and beef as I want. That's incredible. It's incredible how quickly that gets old. And you're like, oh God, I just want a chocolate bar or...
Yeah, the keto headaches. Then you sort of get into like day 3 or day 4 and you're like, oh, this is... And then it just sort of passes and then you're not really hungry and it's great. And I'm sure obviously like there are people out there that will say, oh, well, I've been doing it for ages and it's fine.
On that health thing, I think you should treat yourself almost like you would treat your dog. And there was a gorgeous golden retriever in your office that was mega. I don't know, who's that?
Marvin, it's mine.
Is it yours? I took a picture of him. Great dog. My favourite dog ever. My girlfriend's allergic to dogs, so we can't have a dog, annoyingly. Yeah, so I always say treat yourself like you would your dog. You feed them well, give them good stuff, take them out for exercise, give them loads of love, and you know what I mean? If you treat yourself like that, or treat yourself like someone that you're responsible for looking after, you would treat yourself completely differently. It's like if you don't take your dog out for a walk, if you ever have done, you start chewing things up, going mad, like acting crazy. Yeah. That's exactly the same as you. If you don't go out for like a run or do some sort of exercise, you start to get a bit weird and just, you're a different person.
So I think the turning point for me when it came to exercise was obviously lockdown. Probably put on quite a bit of weight and didn't really do any exercise, and it sort of probably became very like focused around work, and that probably wasn't the best thing for me. I remember a conversation from like health is wealth. There's nothing truer than that in terms of that statement, because without your health, what do you have? And the turning point for me was I had a bit of a health scare.
Did you?
So actually, I woke up one morning with like a really, really intense back spasm, and I couldn't walk, stand, breathe properly. Like we phoned 111 and I ended up in hospital in A&E that day, because they were saying, oh, this behaviour could be a result of like a blood clot.
Oh,
and I just remember thinking like, I need to prioritize health as a result of this, because like this might be like a little bit of a warning sign that actually I need to get my act together. And then I decided like a few days after that, once I was recovered from the spasm, to go back and I got on the bike for the first time. And I was gassed after about 15 minutes and nearly passed out.
Yeah.
But so that was an eye opener, and that was the kick that I needed, I think, to go and start taking exercise seriously. It's a massive performance. It's almost like it is a performance enhancing drug exercise. You know, you do it and it improves not only your personal life, but your work life too.
Yeah, absolutely it does. It sounds like you're proper into it now as well, which is great.
Yeah, I set out some like goals for the next like few years.
Ooh.
So I have some weight to lose. So my first goal is weight orientated. My second goal is also weight orientated. I've broken it down to 2 sections. But then within that, I want to start doing a triathlon. So I want to do a sprint triathlon. 6 months after that, I want to do a 70.3 half Ironman. And then within 3 to 4 years, a full Ironman. Because that requires like a level of like conviction of training that I don't probably have in me right now.
Yeah.
I think that's like 20 to 30 hours a week, like a full Ironman.
It's like another job.
Yeah. So that definitely requires like the business to be in a different position and like, you know, to have a lot more free time.
You get that cool tattoo at the end.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I would get the tattoo.
Oh, you have to.
You think I'd have to?
You have to, yeah.
I'd have to get somewhere inconspicuous.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
back.
Someone said to me, I was talking to someone about the Iron Man tattoo, so I'm going to get an Iron Man tattoo when I complete it. I went, that's really cool. And I thought it must be a really cool logo if he said that. I went to look at the logo.
It's not.
I'm like, it's disappointing.
Yeah, they need to rebrand.
I'll have to design my own Iron Man tattoo.
Yeah. Just you're talking about goals there. Sorry, I know we're going on a bit of a tangent here, but it's all relevant. Again, a really good book. It got recommended to me by a friend called Matt. You know the Dilbert cartoons?
Yes. Yeah.
Scott Adams, who does them, he wrote a book called How to Fail at Everything and Still Kind of Succeed Anyway, or something along those lines. But part of that, in his book, he talks about how goals are for losers and systems are for winners. It's an interesting concept. Instead of like setting a goal, it's like, how do you set systems in place just day to day that you hit your goal anyway? Like, instead of saying I'm going to lose X amount, it's like I'm going to eat these foods, or instead of I'm going to do 4 weight sessions a week, legs, push, whatever, blah, blah. It's like I'm just going to sweat every day and things like that. It's quite an interesting concept.
So more of like a simplification as opposed to like a specific Like building habits almost, because there's the Atomic Habits book, which I've not actually read.
James
I believe is very good.
Yeah.
I think for me, I like keeping it simple. So just like get out and move, get out and do something for the, train on those days and try not to overcomplicate it too much.
Yeah.
If my coach puts something in that's just too complicated, I'll message him and say, just take that out, please. Like I want it simple. Otherwise it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to enjoy it. And enjoyment is massive for like, health and fitness. Like you need to do something that you like, that you enjoy. And that way it just comes naturally, then it becomes a habit. And then before you know it, you're doing it every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you saying like if you put something in your plan that's like, you need to do X amount of cycling, for, this heart rate for X amount of time, oh, God, can I just do it for 20 minutes and then stop for 5?
Yeah, so an example would be like, so some weight exercises that I was like, I've never done these exercises before. I'm kind of injury prone. There's a lot of new exercises here that I've never done that I probably need like coaching on.
Right.
And I was like, can we just keep it simple and go back to like the classic lifts, like, chest press, overhead press, deadlift, etc. Because those are things that I'm comfortable with and that I know. And some of these other exercises, they probably are really great, but like we need to schedule a session and actually go to his gym and do a PT session with him privately to go through those movements. But I like to just keep it simple, stick to what I know. That routine builds efficiency and speed as well. Like the more it's a routine, so if I'm going cycling, I put all my work clothes and my cycling stuff hung up on the back of the door, and then I'm ready to go in the morning. Everything's prepped, I have all the bottles ready, everything. Because it's just like, take all that pain away of getting up early and getting out. And it does work. The easier you can make it, the better. Because if there's a load of faffing in the morning that I have to do to get ready, it's just an excuse for myself.
Yeah.
Not that I should let the inner little bitch win, but yeah.
Oh, no, I'm really happy to hear that you're on that journey anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely cool. Do you have any goals in terms of like fitness?
I want to run a marathon. I haven't run a marathon yet. I did a half marathon in April, I think. And I got a really good time, like an hour 43, which isn't bad.
That's really good.
Yeah, and that wasn't with loads of training. I would love to do an Ironman at some point, but I just can't imagine how to get through it.
It's a lot of suffering, I think. And I think Goggins, God love Goggins, has this quote, and it's something like, when you think you're done, you're only at 40% of what you're capable of.
Jeez, right, okay.
It's your mind tapping out.
Yeah.
And is it Rich Roll, the guy that did like 3 Ironmans back to back? I think he quotes that in his book. He says like, when I was around the course, I'm like, I'm really, really suffering. I'm like, this is not possible. I'm not going to finish this. He's got Goggins playing over in his head, and he's like, and that spurred me back on to actually finish and complete the race.
Jeez.
Like I go out on these bike rides and I do like 20 or like 35 kilometers at the moment, like depending which route I'm taking. And I sit and I think the Ironman is 180 kilometers on the bike. But before that, I just swum like, is it 2.9 or 3.9 kilometers? And then interval, run a marathon.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't compute right now.
No. It's crazy. Yeah. I don't know how. Yeah. Finish off with a marathon.
Yeah.
Finish.
Yeah. How about just try and attempt at least one of them?
Yeah. That's so true.
If you had to start a new business tomorrow, what do you think you would do differently if you could, having learned everything that you've learned over the past few years?
Okay, 2 things. I would take loads of time on branding, not just a logo, but also what's your voice in the market and how do you want it to come across. I spent loads of time on that. We went through a massive rebrand like a year in, and it was such a pain in the arse to do it all. And then I'm still finding like the old logos on things. And I'm like,
that's us. We're still finding the old logos on things. Yeah.
It's so infuriating. Like, oh, get away. No, I want to forget about that logo. Yeah. It's horrendous. And so there was definitely that. And there would be definitely hiring the right people from the start, and having a real focus on, getting that initial team in place that's just like your killer A team, and not settling for anything other than like A players. If you've got any concerns, you're not excited about hiring somebody, don't do it, because it just gives you, again, it's just headache you don't need.
Yeah, particularly in that early stages, you need that team of the A's that can help drive and lead everything else, because they're your future leaders as you grow as a business. So yeah, you really got to capitalize on getting those right people on the bus. In fact, I think that's probably hire great people and leave them to it, isn't it? That's the focus on hiring the right people in the early days, and maybe like spend a bit more to hire sort of more experienced leaders and people. Perhaps make use of like non-exec people that we'd spoke to earlier on in the process.
Yeah.
To get their advice and sort of maximize what we're doing. That's the Q skip. You hire these great people. They've already been there, done that. That's your little Q skip. That gets you all those things that you might try to do and fail as a learning experience. They can like, oh no, actually, those 5 things you're going to try and none of them are going to work. So just avoid those. Yeah. And it makes life so much easier.
Yeah. And imagine that, and like I said, it's a bit more expensive, but saves you so much money and time in the long run, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You can focus on that ideation and that bigger picture thinking rather than being down in the weeds so much.
Exactly, yeah.
What defines a killer interview process?
Good question. What defines a killer interview process? This is a really important one because I think there's a few different things. Firstly, one-stage interviews don't work unless you do it correctly. And that's weird coming from a recruiter because recruiters tend to want you to have the shortest interview process possible. The issue is with one-stage interview processes, you don't find out enough about the candidate and you don't get to really make an informed decision on the candidate, and you might feel like you're rushing yourself, but also the candidate will feel rushed and won't feel like they've got the confidence that they're accepting this role because they've just spoken to you for an hour, haven't managed to meet the team, nothing like that. So you might feel like you're being efficient, but what you really are doing is putting people off, I think, unless you do it really, really, really well.
Yeah, and I think there's an element of like the subconscious there, like, but on both parts going away to process, because you can often, as either a candidate or an employer at the moment, there might be things that you want to ask about, the role, or the employer might want to ask of the candidate or their experience or how they might help solve certain challenges that you're not going to necessarily think of on your feet. And actually getting that time to digest, ready for a second stage, is probably really beneficial.
Absolutely. And I think if you're doing a one-stage interview, you need to be really careful not to make it just a fire load of questions at the person. Allow them time to follow up again with questions if they don't have anything on the first one. Give them an opportunity to meet the team and come into your office as well if you're an in-office business, and allow them to have another follow-up call if that's required. Allow them that flexibility, really.
Yep.
And then also explain why you do one-stage interviews. Maybe it's because you realise how valuable people's time is if they're in a full-time job, and how the market moves quickly, etc. So really frame it. There's a really good book by Laszlo Bock called Work Rules. He was a HR director, I think, at Google, and they did a study on the effectiveness of certain parts of an interview process. A sample of work will say 29% of their performance in a job. In a future job. A structured interview, and that's being careful with those words because a lot of people don't have structured interviews or standardized interviews, will tell you 27%. Like an assessment, like a conscientiousness-based assessment, will tell you 10%. References will tell you about 7%. And then work history will only tell you about 3%. I believe that a really good process needs to involve certain parts of all of those things. So for me, I think if you're hiring tech people, I think it should be a two-stage process with a test in the middle, depending on the role, obviously. That first stage should be a bit of a numpty test to make sure they're not a numpty and that they can talk to people. That's just go through CV, say hello, tell them about the job, that sort of thing. Next step, send them a test to go and do. But really importantly, I think what a lot of people don't do is book the final stage in once you send that person the test, because it stops them from going away and not giving them a deadline, and it also keeps your time free to interview them once they've gone to do the test, because there's nothing worse than someone doing a test, you review it, but you can't interview them for another week, and then they're off the market. Massive waste of time. And then final interview, go through the test, bit of pair programming, or some sort of like where you work together on a problem and create a solution, get them to meet the team, and then obviously like Q&A, that sort of thing. And then take references. Super important, take references, and ask the person they used to work for what it's like losing them, and if the person that you're speaking to isn't super like excited about them and really, really happy to talk about them and is really complimentary of them, then question, are they an A player? Yeah. Because for me, people that I worked for previously, someone ran me for a reference for them, I'd be like, this person's amazing. You need to hire this person if they're a really good employee.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you heard of top grading?
I have, but I haven't read the book. There's a book on it.
I'm loosely familiar with it, but not massive. I think the concept is something to do with reviewing work history and asking, like, if I asked your previous manager to rate you on these X things, what would they say? It's interesting, but I think it's used by some tech companies, and that's where it comes from. I don't know if it would work necessarily in like the UK job market, but there's some interesting things in there. Yeah, it's an interesting book.
I'll have to give that a look.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you.
You sound like you're into books though, massively.
Yeah, I love them.
Audiobooks or Kindle, what's your sort of like preference?
Yeah, big on Kindle. Well, Kindle Reader for my iPad because it's just bigger.
Yep.
I think the biggest thing for me is that I'll read a book quite quickly, and if I don't highlight anything, I forget the main points. It's like a big waste of time. So I'll highlight it, export the notes, very technical, and then every now and again I can just reread the notes of that book, and it'll take me like an hour.
You've taken that a level beyond me.
Yeah. I'm such a geek, to be honest.
Yeah, I occasionally highlight stuff, but I don't track it. I started using Notion to like bought this Second Brain Notion template.
Yeah.
For like using it as an inbox. You know, like when you find something you're like, that's interesting, but like I don't have the time to consume it right now.
Yeah.
You can store it in Notion in like an inbox. And then you can file it under what like category you want it for as like a reference for the future.
Oh, interesting.
Because
Okay.
I don't know if you like this. I had it's like 60 iPhone tabs open in Safari with like stuff I'd saved that I wanted to go back and read, but just didn't have the time to.
Oh God.
So I'd see them. Well, that's an interesting article about XYZ technology or XYZ thing. It just sits there permanently open, slowing my phone down, using all the battery. So yeah, I started saving it into Notion, and as of yet, I've still not gone back in and actually read any of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's maybe pointless.
You've just pushed it onto another
I
app.
made it another app's problem.
Yeah.
What's the funniest or sort of worst excuses you've had from a candidate about not attending a job interview?
You get the usual family emergency, managers put something in my diary is always a good one. And it's hard not to become pessimistic, I think, when you hear it day in, day out. So I do try to ground myself. But there was one where we had this fella who had a job offer. And everything on paper, it seemed like the right role for him. Genuinely, more pay, more flexible working, so he was allowed to see his kids more. Progression-wise was amazing because the last business he was at wasn't good. And the day he said he was going to give us a decision, he was like, it's probably going to be a yes, Jack. He rings me up, says, I'm not going to take it. I said, what do you mean? Why? What's wrong? What's happened? I had a dream last night and God came to me in this dream and said that I can't take this job. And I was that, and usually I'm quite like good at kind of getting to the bottom of things and questioning things to the point where we figure out, okay, what.
How did you hold back?
It's a hard sell to go against that. I couldn't. I asked him. It got to the point where I was like, oh, but come on, mate, that you can't be serious here now. Come on. It's like, no, I just can't. So that was probably the most bizarre excuse I've had, that God came to him in a dream and told him that he couldn't take the job.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It was hard to tell the client afterwards that was the reason that he wasn't taking the job as well.
Yeah. Was that really the reason? Well, you don't want to hear the real reason that he's actually not taking the
Let's
job.
just say it's a family emergency. All right. Yeah.
A higher power spoke to him. What, aliens? No, God.
I wish it was aliens.
Thanks for watching the podcast. My name's Chris, and this has been episode 1 of the Game Changers podcast. If you like today's content, please leave a comment on the video, and don't forget to subscribe.